On February 25, 2026, the Supreme Court struck down Trump's tariffs and America exhaled. But the 25% duty on imported cars imposed under Section 232 never went anywhere. Catalyst IQ shows 2026 models nearly $2,000 more expensive, some over $4,000. The average new car passed $50,000. Automaker margins slashed from 8.1% to 3.9%. You're walking into a tariff trap, and what comes next is worse. On February 25, 2026, the Supreme Court issued a 6-3 decision that struck down the Trump administration's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, for tariffs. The headlines promised relief, but the reality for car buyers was unchanged. The court's ruling only touched IEEPA tariffs. The 25% duty on imported cars and trucks imposed under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act remained untouched. So did the 15% tariff targeting vehicles from Japan, South Korea, and the European Union. Within hours, the White House turned to Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974, adding a new 15% global surcharge. That surcharge took effect on February 24, 2026, stacking on top of existing duties for most imports and pushing the combined rate as high as 40% for many vehicles. Section 232 duties, justified by national security, stood firm, insulated from the Supreme Court's reach. The new Section 122 surcharge, capped at 15% for 150 days but easily extended, applied broadly and was collected alongside the 25% auto tariff. Customs and Border Protection confirmed the tariffs are additive, not substitutes. For imported vehicles and U.S.-built models relying on foreign parts, the cost structure shifted overnight. Cox Automotive's analysts warned the real impact sits in Section 122, particularly around steel, aluminum, and imported vehicles. The numbers followed. Catalyst 1Q's VIN-level data showed 2026 models arriving with an average price hike of $2,000, up from $400 the year before. 23 models now carry increases of $2,000 or more, compared to 9 in 2025. The average new vehicle price in the U.S. now exceeds $50,000. EBIT margins have dropped from 8.1% to 3.9% in 2 years. Toyota reported an $8 billion tariff hit. Anderson Economic Group estimates U.S. automakers have absorbed more than $10.6 billion in tariff costs so far. The 25% duty and 15% surcharge remain, reshaping the auto market and dispelling any illusion of tariff relief. Sticker prices on new cars have taken a sharp turn. Catalyst IQ's VIN-level data shows that for 2026, the average new vehicle sticker jumped by about $2,000, 5 times last year's typical increase. 23 models, from compacts to pickups, now carry at least a $2,000 hike compared to just 9 the year before. The Toyota RAV4, assembled in Kentucky, saw its base price rise from $31,250 to $33,350, a $2,100 jump. The average new car in the United States now costs over $50,000, a threshold crossed for the first time, according to Cox Automotive. Cox Automotive projects retail prices will climb another 4% to 8% by year's end, fueled by the 25% Section 232 tariff on imported vehicles and the 15% global surcharge following the Supreme Court's February 2026 decision. Even American-built SUVs aren't spared. Tariff parts alone add about $2,000 to the cost of a typical United States assembled SUV. Anderson Economic Group estimates automakers have already absorbed over $10.6 billion in tariff costs. Toyota's internal numbers put its own tariff burden near $8 billion, calling the situation highly disruptive and unsustainable. Sonic Automotive's Jeff Dyke warns, automakers can't just sit back and lose billions, they're passing costs down the line. As new car prices climb, more buyers are turning to the used market, which remains tight after the pandemic's 8 million vehicle production shortfall. Used car prices are spiking, and repair costs are rising as imported parts now face steep duties. Insurance premiums have jumped 20% to 40% in states hit hardest by tariffed models, as actuaries adjust for higher replacement costs. Anderson Economic Group's latest survey finds a clear uptick in auto loan delinquencies among buyers stretched by these new prices. For those seeking relief, United States-built vehicles with deep domestic parts networks, like the Ford F-150 and Toyota Camry, offer some insulation. But even these advantages are shrinking as rebates phase out and tariffs persist. Automaker financials now read like a warning label for American households. As tariffs ratchet up costs, the pain doesn't stop at the factory gate. It flows directly to families shopping for their next car. Toyota's internal figures lay bare the scale. $8 billion lost to tariffs in North America alone, a hit the company calls highly disruptive and unsustainable. Ford and General Motors, while less specific, each report multi-billion-dollar surges in costs tied to the new duties. Stellantis, the parent of Jeep and Chrysler, paused production at plants in Canada and Mexico, resulting in 900 layoffs and billions in added expenses. Profit margins across the industry have collapsed. In 2024, automakers still managed an average EBIT margin of 8.1%. By early 2026, that figure has dropped to just 3.9%. Anderson Economic Group's tally puts the cumulative tariff bill for U.S. automakers at more than $10.6 billion, money that once funded new models, factory upgrades, and jobs. Instead, it's now swallowed by customs payments and supply chain workarounds. Cox Automotive's analysts warn that the real impact sits in Section 232, particularly around steel, aluminum, and imported vehicles. The numbers echo that alarm. Volkswagen's 2026 prices are up between 1.9% and 6.5%, Audi's by as much as $4,100, and even US-built SUVs now carry about $2,000 in added costs from tariffed parts alone. Dealers and industry leaders are blunt about what comes next. Jeff Dyke, president of Sonic Automotive, says automakers can't just sit back and lose billions, they're passing costs down the line. The sticker shock is not an abstraction. It shows up in higher monthly payments, steeper insurance premiums, and a shrinking pool of affordable options. The Anderson Economic Group warns that these losses aren't just numbers on a balance sheet. They mean fewer jobs, delayed launches, and higher prices for every buyer. The result is a cascade that starts on the factory floor but ends at the kitchen table. As corporate losses mount, every dollar squeezed from automaker margins finds its way to the consumer, whether through the price tag on a new car, the cost of a repair, or the size of an insurance bill. The stakes have never been more personal for American families facing the tariff trap. For buyers determined to dodge the worst of the tariff trap, a handful of strategies stand out. Vehicles assembled in the United States with deep domestic parts networks offer the strongest protection against the new cost structure. The Ford F-150 leads the pack, with about 80% of its components sourced domestically. Chevrolet Silverado comes in at 78%, while the Toyota Camry and Honda Accord follow closely at 73% and 71% U.S. content, respectively. These models avoid the 25% Section 232 tariff on imported vehicles and the 15% surcharge that now targets most foreign-built cars. For anyone shopping new, these are the closest thing to tariff-proof options available in today's market. But even these high domestic content vehicles are losing their edge. The long-standing domestic model rebate, once a 3.75% discount on qualifying purchases, has already shrunk to 2.5% as of May 2026. That rebate disappears entirely at the end of 2027. With each phase down, the buffer between buyers and sticker shock gets thinner. Missing the rebate window can mean hundreds or even thousands more out of pocket, especially as automakers trim incentives to offset their own shrinking margins. Cox Automotive warns that as rebates phase out, the insulation for U.S.-built models is vanishing fast. Timing is everything. Pre-April 2025 vehicles, whether new or used, carry a unique advantage. Any car built and registered before the Section 232 tariff took effect was priced under the old regime. These vehicles escape the 25% import duty and the 15% surcharge, locking in a lower cost basis. Dealers confirm a price gap of $1,500 to $2,500 between these pre-tariff models and their 2026 counterparts. For shoppers who can find one, a used vehicle with a VIN dated before April 2025 can mean real savings, not just on the purchase price, but on future repairs, since their parts networks were priced before the tariff hikes. Older, simpler trucks and sedans amplify these savings. Models built before 2015, especially those with high domestic content, offer a double layer of protection: no embedded tariff premium and easier access to affordable replacement parts. Anderson Economic Group notes that the best shield against the tariff cascade is a pre-tariff used vehicle with a robust U.S. parts supply. For families and individuals facing the squeeze of higher sticker prices, rising insurance premiums, and tougher loan terms, these strategies offer a way out of the trap. In a market reshaped by policy, the smartest moves are grounded in timing, origin, and simplicity. Today, tariffs quietly add thousands to every new car, $2,000 more on average, with prices topping $50,000 and automaker margins halved. As Anderson Economic Group warns, over $10.6 billion in tariff costs now flow straight to consumers. In this market, knowledge isn't just power, it's protection. Shop smart.